Hi everybody, I'm Susan. I'm going to show you how I make my famous black bean brownies. They're going to be vegan, they're going to be oil-free, gluten-free, and nut-free. And I have already measured out all of my ingredients, so we can take a look at what I have here. It takes about 30 to 35 minutes to bake them once you mix them up. So first I'm going to mix all the dry ingredients, then we'll mix the wet ingredients in the blender. You can mix it by hand if you want. It's better if you can put it in the blender because you'll get a nice smooth mixture of the black beans. And then we're going to add the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, put it in the pan that I've already lined with parchment, bake it for 30 to 35 minutes. You want to make sure that it's completely cool before you try to cut it. And so, come on over and I'll show you how I put this together. So I've already measured everything out here. I went ahead and put the baking powder and baking soda and salt all together. So it's two teaspoons of baking powder, half of salt and a half of baking soda. Half cup, I'm using coconut sugar. You could use another kind of sugar if you like. This is coconut sugar. All my ingredients are organic. I have a quarter cup of buckwheat flour. And I have 3/4 of a cup of oat flour, which I mixed, blended up in my blender from raw oats. And I have half a cup of raw cacao. You could use cocoa, but it will definitely have a different taste. Then I have half a teaspoon of vanilla powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. Those are your dry ingredients. For the wet ingredients, I have 1 cup of plant milk. I'm using almond, but you could use oat or whatever your favorite plant milk is. We have a cup of cooked and drained and rinsed black beans. We have a 1/4 cup of pumpkin puree. And once I pour this out, I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of raw agave. You can also use maple syrup. So first I'm going to go ahead and put all the dry ingredients in this bowl. Meanwhile, I've already got my oven heated up. I'm going to put all the dry things right in here. We're saving the vegan chocolate chips for last. That's a half a cup of vegan chocolate chips, which will be folded in at the end before we bake. And I'll also put some on the top once I get the batter in the pan. I'm going to take a whisk, just mix all this dry stuff so it doesn't have any big lumps in it. Little bumps are fine because once you get the wet ingredients in there, it'll all dissolve. But make sure you try to get all of the different ingredients incorporated so that it's a pretty uniform mixture. Okay. Then we're going to add into my blender. Pitcher, I'm going to add the milk and the black beans. Pumpkin puree, put all that good pumpkin in there. This is what keeps it nice and moist, and it means you don't have to add oil or eggs to this recipe at all. And I'm going to put the 1/3 of a cup of agave in here. Mix all that in. So the mixture's all blended now, and I'm going to just add that right into the dry ingredients. Just dip it right in. started with the whisk. I'm going to mix it all together. It'll be a fairly thick batter. Just want to make sure you don't have any dry lumps or anything that's not completely wet. Okay. And last of all but not least, in goes the chocolate chips. Fold those in. Quickly, easy. Such an easy recipe, and it's so tasty. And it's actually very healthy because it's full of fiber, especially when you use the organic ingredients, the raw cacao, the beans. Gives you all kinds of great vitamins and minerals, and tastes good too. Win-win. Okay, I'm going to grab my pan. Okay, so this is an 8-inch square baking pan. I've already cut some parchment paper to put in there. And I just use that, and it actually makes it really easy once it's done too, because you can just lift it out. Main thing you want to make sure before you try to cut it though, as I said, you want it to be completely cooled. So it's going to be a challenge to wait until it gets completely cooled. You're going to want to cut it, but don't, because you won't get a nice clean cut that way. It has to have a chance to solidify just a little bit. Okay, we got this nice yummy batter. Make sure I get everything in there. And then make sure you also kind of make sure it goes into the corners, into the paper. And I have some extra chocolate chips that's set aside. I'm going to kind of sprinkle those around on top, and they'll kind of bake in just a little bit as it cooks. You don't have to put them on top too. You can actually frost it or put a glaze if you prefer, or even just leave it plain. Dust it with a little vegan powdered sugar. Lots of options. It's such a great recipe. Gives you plenty of ways to dress it up. It's going to be almost a cakey kind of dense texture when it's done. Okay, now it's ready to go into the oven. And in about 35 minutes, it'll be done. Okay, our brownies are ready. They were baked at 350 last night for 35 minutes. Check them at 30, depending on your oven. It could take a little bit less than 30, 35, but probably 35 is good. I tested them in the middle with a toothpick and made sure it came out clean. And then I put them in the refrigerator overnight. Covered them and put them in the refrigerator. So now they're ready for us to taste, and boy, they look good. As far as you want your brownies, I usually cut these into 16. But it's up to you. You want them bigger or smaller. And I'll tell you, when these are baking, it's like smelling a chocolate pumpkin pie. Because that little bit of cinnamon in there gives it a great, great touch. You see they're nice and firm. That's why it's really important to put them in the refrigerator or really allow them to get completely chilled.